Hello and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast. This is Jill Bodensteiner, Director of Athletics at St. Joseph's University. As leaders, it's really important that we're clear regarding our goals and our vision and how those integrate into the greater university goals. We also need to collectively create a strategy and a culture that are going to help us reach our goals. This is an evolving exercise that requires an openness to continuous improvement. That's why I follow the One Question Leadership Podcast, because I love learning as much as I possibly can from my colleagues that helps me be the best that I can be. So my message for the day, keep learning, keep leading.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive and organizational leadership. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at OneQLeadership. A quick note before we begin. This episode was recorded before the current pandemic chapter of global history, so please listen with that context in mind. Our guest today is Will Reece. Will is the founder of CALS, which is Collegiate Athletic Leadership Symposium. He also runs Next Level Sports. In his previous lifetime, he was a basketball coach in high school and college. Greetings, Will. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Ty. Really appreciate it and really appreciate the work you do and enjoy listening to your podcast.
Thank you very much. I always love to talk to people who listen to it. I'm very appreciative of that. I'll have you on because I want to talk a little about CALS, right? Collegiate Athletic Leadership Symposium. You started it in 2011, and you call it a professional development and networking event for college athletics administrators. The event is every October. It's usually hosted by a campus, either on that campus or near that campus. It seems to have grown into a significant event in the college athletics industry.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely really fortunate to have found a following and been able to grow over the years.
I guess the question I have for you, from your background with Next Level Sports as an agent, from your background in coaching, what led you to create the CALS Symposium? And my understanding is that it's an invitation-only event, but it isn't exclusive. Expound on that for me, too.
Yeah, you bet. Well, to kind of take you back a little bit, you talked a little bit about my background, but we've all got our different makeups and personalities, and now we have all the Enneagram and online tests to figure out what we are. But one thing I think I've always been is a connector, and that's from a young age. Hey, I know this person, and why wouldn't they? And they definitely need to know each other. As you said, in a previous life, I was a high school and college basketball coach. With that, or really any occupation, there's the main purpose, which at that time was win games, positively impact people, advance in your career, whatever that might be. And then there's the community around that purpose, the people involved in the game or the industry or whatever you're in. And, coming up, I was always fascinated by that community and loved to build relationships with like-minded people who share the same interest and passion. As I would build relationships, as I said, it would always come to mind that, hey, I need to introduce this person and that person. Or, this coach and this AD need to meet each other because they would really get along. And, that's, something that really was one of the springboards into starting Next Level. And in the process of starting our business at Next Level in college athletics in 2008, I began to build a network of coaches, ADs, associate ADs, search firms, groups or businesses that serve the athletics industry. As we ramp up there by 2011, I'd build a relationship with a group of administrators, kind of the up and coming crew, in their late 20s and early 30s, who some were ADs maybe at a lower level, Division II, Division III level, or NAI, and some were associate ADs at Division I level. And many of these people were really in the process of ramping up in the industry and building their networks at the same time. There was a group of folks that I built relationships with that were really talented and maybe didn't come up in a system with big godfathers or mentors. They had kind of come from a different level or a different place, but I thought were great folks and were really, really talented. At the same time, I was building with administrators at every level, and some of which were maybe a step or two ahead of this up-and-coming group in the business. And it became clear to me that, these groups needed to meet and spend time together. My last job in basketball was working on the staff at the University of Tulsa in 2006. Tulsa is my hometown and where I live now. So I was able to work with and get to know Bubba Cunningham, who at the time was the athletic director of Tulsa. By 2011, Bubba had been at Tulsa for about 5 years and was very well liked and respected in the business. So I knew as I was kind of looking at, hey, how do we do this? How do we bring, these groups together? I said, well, Bubba's a guy that everybody likes and everybody respects. So, that's a good place to start. So in August of 2011, I approached him about having a small conference in Tulsa, gathering administrators for professional development and networking. First of all, those listening that know Bubba, who is now obviously the AD at North Carolina, that he's one of the brightest and most influential ADs in the country. But he is absolutely a better human being. But he thought it would be great and got the deal together. And 2 months later, we hosted our first CALS in Tulsa. We had about 40 people. And the good thing is actually the week of CALS, Bubba got the job at Carolina. So the good part of that is we had a place to go the second year. and so we've been fortunate enough over the years to see the event grow and resonate with the college athletics community. And when you talk about the process, and it's interesting how that's developed over time, because we call it process as by invitation but not exclusive. So one of the words that people talk a lot about with CALS is organic, in just the way it was grown. And it was literally me talking to a handful of people, and then them sending me a few names, and then convening in Tulsa in 2011, and then the next year going back to those people and saying, hey, who should we invite next year? And so it's organic, as grassroots as it can get, and kind of as we've grown over the years, we've changed our processes somewhat for invitation. Really tried to be more inclusive. Because if you are, it's a really interesting thing if you're starting with one group, and obviously you can get referrals from that group, but then we started branching out and trying to get people from different areas, whether it's geographically, and just be more diverse, by gender and race and things that we're really looking for in this industry now, to be able to serve and empower leaders.
Do they, and I don't know if the process is proprietary, but do you ask the attendees who they think should come? Do they just send you emails, hey, this person would be great? And I'll say this real quick. When Dutch created the Institute years ago with the Division I Athletic Directors Association, to go to the Institute, you had to be recommended by an athletics director. Like, is it similar to that, or that's something you can share?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to share. It's similar. There's probably a little more art than science to it, and it has evolved over years. But yeah, the core principle of it is one person coming and saying, hey, who you should invite is this person. And over time, as our numbers have gotten bigger and as we've grown somewhat in popularity and people thinking it's something they really want to take part in, I think kind of a shift has been more to a senior group. We like to have some diversity in there of level. We like to have some associate athletic directors, some senior, because we like to be an event where people, an AD can come and meet somebody and hire them. That's happened several times over the years. At the same time, we have search firms involved that are able to connect with and build relationships with people who they might want to put in searches at one point. One thing we're really looking hard at is starting a second event for a more assistant AD director level type that's almost like a feeder, because we've gotten to the point now where that's one of our limiting factors is hey, we're getting to people that are that have this ambition, or a couple maybe 1 or 2 steps away from potentially being in that AD chair. But yeah, it's most part still comes down to a recommendation process, and if it's somebody that's been with us and they fit the criteria that we're looking for as far as our group, then they'll get on the invitation list. But the funny thing is, it's really changed over the years, Todd, because the first few years, I must have quit spamming me emails dozens of times. And now we're fortunate enough to be around long enough, and people know us, and people know where we are, that they're usually pretty receptive.
Yeah, that speaks to the credibility of the event. And I assume that aspect of it being invitation only but not exclusive is what has helped build the credibility over the years.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, because
obviously good programming too, but that's
right. Yeah, there's two pieces to it. It's getting the right group in the room, and because it's been so organic and grassroots, it's been one person asking another. It's really a high touch process. It's somebody saying, man, you got to go to CALS, which, as we know, is the best way to have that kind of viral piece and really personal part. That's not just, hey, here's an advertisement, come and do this, but this deal's ramped up. We didn't walk into this with a bunch of expectations, and that's part of the cool part of it is the way it's grown. We've just tried to keep up with it every step of the way, and adjust as the events changed in the eyes of the industry. And yeah, that's a really big part of it, is that people feel like they're getting invited or getting nominated or whatever it is by somebody they really like and trust. And you talk about building the credibility over the years, which I love that question, because CALS has resonated and grown over the years. We're always evaluating what the core parts of the event are, what's working well, what we need to protect on what's working well, and what areas we can improve the experience for our group.
Right. I wonder, I'll ask a couple questions here before we wrap. The first one ties to that credibility, ties to the intimacy and people being willing to share. Is there a line, attendance number, a size? Is there a point where you may lose that because everybody wants to be there, or you've invited so many that now the numbers are so big that people are unwilling to share? When I used to work at the American Football Coaches Association, we tried to create little small, what we call buzz sessions. So coaches come in with a chalkboard, like no video, and share their stuff. But they started getting so big that people weren't willing to share it because they were afraid the competition was in the room or something like that. Obviously, this is not football coaching, but I wonder if there's a line where you have to balance where, okay, are we at our max point, or are we at the line where people won't share because they're not sure about who's here or something like that?
Right, and that's definitely that's probably our number one question year in and year out, is that overall we talk about the atmosphere of the event and keeping an atmosphere, because there's something to it. It's just really, really a cool feel, and just the way that people connect, not only in the sessions, but just in kind of the downtimes, the meals, the lobby, all that is really great, and you see authentic connections everywhere. But no, that is something, and I think that we do different levels. We have breakout sessions. We kind of break up into different groups, and so I think that does allow, it's a little some more safe space. But one thing we do is we don't film sessions. We don't have a lot of media at our events, and part of that is it's set up to be the emphasis on development, and the emphasis on helping the kind of the next generation as they're coming up, and building into them. So I do think there's a side where that gets harder, and to some extent I'm sure it has to this point. People are more interested in 40 than they are in when there's a couple hundred in the room. But that's one of the reasons we really try to have kind of a controlled growth this year, and we're right there, I think. I mean, I don't know that we get a whole lot bigger than we are right now.
Right, and I imagine that is when you talk about that thing that you have that kind of helps you to be successful, that is something that you definitely want to protect. So I imagine it's probably a part of the discussions every year as you put together the event.
Yeah, what 100%. And when you look at the growth, it just becomes down to, I think a lot of it's when you look at it and you look at somebody that wants to come, it's like, oh man, we have to have them in the room. And so, in a sense, even though it's gotten bigger, the quality of the people we've added and who they are in the industry and kind of where they're going, or what they represent, it's really additive. And so when you look at it from that perspective, it's kind of like you hope it just speaks to you and says, okay, that this person or these people, they've got to be involved, and that adds to what we're doing as opposed to diluting it in any way.
Right, excellent. Well, I'll ask one question here and then we'll wrap. You've been involved with college athletics for a while. There are always hot button issues that are discussed no matter what event someone's at. I wonder if you've seen items discussed at your event and then they play out as the rest of the calendar year or the next couple years folds out, right? You've seen people discuss something that, maybe this is the first time they discussed it because of no media and no cameras, and they discuss it at your event. And, come the following April when they have to vote on something, like, this is actually something they talked about at CALS. This is amazing. Like, I wonder if that's an evaluation point, or is it just attendees keeping that secret formula together? Talk to me a little bit about looking at the outcomes, I guess, of the event.
Yeah, there's definitely been, we've dealt with all sorts of issues, over the years. Early on, for years or several years, the conference realignment was the hot button issue. To the point where we were always in flux on what speakers were going to show up. Depending on what conference was going to call an emergency meeting, and I remember one year, I believe it was 15, that we had people that were in the American, that were, the Big 12 was doing their big deal where they were, taking on, people that were interested in having meetings, and we had people that were coming directly from those meetings to CALS. And I guess that was 16. That would have been 16. And so there has been, the really cool thing has been that there have been people, and of course the last couple of years we've been talking a lot about NIL. There's been all kinds of stuff happening, stuff that's happening on campus, whether it's different issues with student athletes, obviously the FBI investigations in college basketball, all kinds of different things that are really discussed, and sometimes really NCAA issues, stuff that people are going through specifically, that gets discussed in a different level. And I would say not in a level that puts anybody's campus or university in a bad spot, but in a level, almost at a personal level, of like, hey, as a leader, as an athletic director or whatever role I'm in, you've read, this is what we're dealing with. Well, sometimes it's easier postmortem, when kind of a conclusion, something's come to a conclusion, and they can talk a little more openly about it. But definitely, NIL was talked a lot about in Denton. I don't know if anything was really figured out as much as just kind of a process. I think the cool thing is, because what we are is that we're a development event, and we're a place for at our core is helping the next generation of athletic directors learn. And so when you get somebody sitting maybe is a number 2 in a department, or number 3, or even down the chart a little bit, when they're able to hear somebody that's kind of in the fire with these issues, discuss it in the community of college athletics, how we're working through it.
All right, excellent. Well, this has been an excellent conversation. I really like what you said right at the beginning, that the industry may have a purpose, but then there's the community around the purpose. I think that's very insightful about really any industry or organization. I like what you're doing with CALS. It sounds like you guys have a great future. You want to keep protecting that formula like Coca-Cola so that the event continues at a high level. And I really appreciate you joining us here on One Question.
Well, Ty, I really appreciate it, and keep up the great work.
That was Will Reece. Will is the founder of CALS, which is the Collegiate Athletics Leadership Symposium. And of course, this is Tai Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.